Hi, I'm Lisa Hayden with Channel 6, Central Kentucky TV, community focus on Washington County. And we are happy to have with us our retired circuit judge, Doughlas George.
Just call me Dodie.
Well, that's what we're used to
Well,
calling you
that's
in
what
this
everybody
county.
calls me.
Or Judge George.
Just call me Dodie.
Okay. What is your full name? Because it is Doughlas
It's
M.
Doughlas Michael George.
That's what because your son's named Michael.
That's right.
I assume the M was for Michael. So, yeah, Doughlas Michael George. And Dodie, of course, you were born and raised in Marion County.
That's correct.
But we consider you a Washington Countian.
Well, I've lived here 38 or 9 years. So I lived 18 in Marion, went to school, and so I guess
you were a UK grad,
I went
right?
I went to University of Kentucky undergrad, and I went to the University of Louisville School of Law and got my Juris Doctor from there. And I practiced about a year in Louisville, and then I moved to Springfield.
Yeah. Because?
Well, I really didn't enjoy practicing law in Louisville, and I didn't go to Lebanon because I have a brother who graduated the same time from law school as I did. His name's Philip, and he went back to Lebanon right away and was practicing with my cousin Elmer George, and I just didn't think there'd be enough work for me there, and I thought there'd be a market here, so I just set up an office up there in the old McCord Law Office, rented from Mary Thelma Kelly. So, and I've been here ever since.
Oh gosh, Dodie, I'd forgotten that's where your first office was.
That's right.
The old law office at the McCord.
That's correct.
House, yes.
It was.
Yes.
After that, it became something like a little, not a bed and breakfast.
Was that John Kelly's office before?
No.
That was next to it.
That was down. Yes, down the street. I was right in that. Mary Thelma went in, and she was doing a bunch of renovation on the house and the carriage house and the little law building, and it just was perfect timing for me to.
Yeah.
That's just what I needed then. I was just a solo practitioner and had 2 rooms in there, and I started from there. So.
Yeah. And then, of course,
I became district judge about 5 years later.
You met your wife.
That's right. She's from here, Lou Ann. She was a Keltie, and I got married in 1981.
Okay. So you came here in
79.
79. And then, of course, you resided here, and then you were practicing law. How many years before you ran for district judge?
It was about 6, and then I got appointed originally.
That's
and
right.
Then
under Governor Collins.
Yes, that's correct. I served about 2 years, and then I had to run, and that was the only time I had to run with any opposition. I won that time, and every other time I was unopposed. So
you're a lucky dog.
I know. I know that.
So you were appointed the first time because we had a vacancy. Because
Judge Mike Hall ascended from district judge to circuit judge, created a vacancy in the 11th Judicial Circuit, and that's when I went after the judgeship.
Right.
So.
And you were appointed and served those 2 years and ran, and who was opposing you at that time?
I ran against a guy from Campbellsville, J.R. Goff, and I won the election, so that district judge is 4-year terms.
Yeah.
And then every other time I was unopposed, and then Judge Hall retired from the circuit bench, and I got the appointment. I was the only one that applied for the circuit vacancy, and then I ran unopposed every time after that. So.
Wow, you really were lucky.
Well, that's right.
So, and so how many years did you serve as district judge?
14 as district. I served 11 as circuit, and then I served 4 years as a senior circuit judge.
Okay.
And I traveled all over the state filling in for other judges. That was part of what was known as the senior status program, which is
no longer in existence.
That's correct. And I probably served in about 35 counties throughout the state. I would fill in if a judge was sick. I may run his regular docket. I did that a lot in Casey and Adair County. One of the judges there had, or the only judge there, had cancer and was sick for a while. So I maintained that docket for a while, and then I filled in, helped out others that had big caseloads, and then whenever there was any recusals because of conflicts of interest, I would go to those places. So I would say I probably served in about 35 different counties in the Commonwealth. So.
And I suppose, Dodie, if I recall, the reason that was created to begin with, that senior circuit, was because of, were there some people filed some suits, or maybe because their cases weren't being heard timely?
There was,
well,
there's always been that issue that cases aren't being heard timely, but it was established to help relieve heavy caseloads, help in all recusal cases, and now they don't have it. They have to call on sitting judges to go to another county if there's a recusal or conflict, and it really creates a problem because they have to leave their circuit, go somewhere else, take time away from where they're supposed to be, and fill in when there's conflict. So, and I know they don't have that many. There is kind of a senior program now, but it's open to judges that have retired recently, and it's not like the old program, but they will fill in occasionally, and I don't know what they get, some kind of pay for doing it, but it's not a whole lot of money. But there's a few doing that, but not a whole lot.
So, of course, those are some other issues we could certainly get into, and I have a lot of questions about those. But I want to get back to the days when you were a district judge, and of course that at that time you had your office right here in the old courthouse, and you were here all the time, and
but I covered 4 counties.
Right. Your office was here, but yes, Marion,
Washington, Taylor, and Greene.
Washington, Taylor, and Greene, which is still our district.
That is correct. There's been talk for years about redistricting everybody, but it really would be pretty complicated to do because you've got to worry about Commonwealth attorneys, who's your sitting circuit judges, who's your sitting district judges. Are you going to redistrict somebody out of a job? And and so I don't know where they're going with that. They've been talking about that since I started, so I don't know if anything's going to come of it or not.
Yeah. So, and then also the circuit judgeship, when you became circuit judge, your office was still here in our new judicial center.
Oh, I started in the old one.
Oh, did you start in the old court? Okay.
It's where the county judge's office is now.
Okay,
but it's a lot nicer over there now than when I was in
there. Oh, yes.
But it needed it.
Yeah.
It really did. And they got nice offices and deserving of it, too. But when I became circuit judge, and near the end of my, right before I retired, we got all new judicial centers for all 4 counties in the circuit, and I was fortunate enough to serve on 3 of the project development boards, Washington, Marion, and Greene. I think Judge Bertram served on the Taylor County project development board, and now we've got nice offices, we've got safety in the buildings. It's just totally different than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's a beautiful building. But if you recall, there was controversy with regard to did we need that big building?
Lisa, you can get me started, and I can talk all day about that. But let me say this: there were serious safety issues before, and now we've got security. Prisoners never leave the building. They come in, they go up their own elevator when they go to court. So. It's safe and secure. People can't sneak stuff to them, that they could take back to the jail. the people are all have to go through a metal detector. You just can't understand how emotional it can be in court, and somebody were to bring a gun or something in there, there's no telling what would happen. So,
I think I can, Dovey.
yeah, but in the courtrooms, we only have one courtroom here in the old courthouse. So district and circuit had to share the courtroom.
Yeah.
Now we have a district courtroom, a circuit courtroom, and what's called a family courtroom, although it's used for civil cases. And that's the same in Marion and Washington and Greene. Taylor's got one smaller courtroom as well. They're the biggest county, and they have the biggest caseload.
Mm-hmm.
They have like another smaller courtroom type also.
Mm-hmm.
But basically all 4 counties are pretty close in what type offices are in there and how they're set up. I know that Marion, Greene, and Washington, the ones I served on, we tried to make it user friendly, that when you walk in, you're not lost and don't know where you're going. And I think it's pretty easy to get around in those buildings. And but those buildings were built to last 50 to 75 years. So if you look at the initial investment that was put into it, and you look at it over that period of time, it's well worth the investment that was made. So.
And it does enhance our downtown. I will say that.
Well, I've been to a lot of places.
It really does.
I've been to a lot of places, and I've heard people brag that have been to our judicial center, and the same in Marion, as to it's one of their favorites.
Yeah.
And these are lawyers all across the state that tell you that.
Oh,
so
well, that's...
we've got something to be
I
proud
know,
of
of course, you helped a lot with the design, as did, several other people, and it is a beautiful building. And of course, safety is a primary factor, and I can remember the days, of when, working as a social worker in the courtroom with you as district judge, and I'd have to go in the sheriff's office for something, and there the prisoners sat, and and they're
people coming up to them and
chain, so you could have sat down and had a conversation with any of them.
Yeah, that's the way it used to be, but it's not like that. And when you had jury trials in the old courthouse, there was also problems, because when you would have to take a break, the jurors the restroom situation over there, they would go to go to the restroom. There'd be people there in there with them. They could talk to them. They could pressure them. And now, the way these new buildings are designed, they have their own room that they can go to, and they have their own facilities within that jury room. And it takes a lot of pressure away from jurors also doing that. So.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So now, as circuit judge, you had what counties?
I had the
same counties as you did as district judge.
That's correct.
Now explain, if you don't mind, the difference between district judge and circuit.
All right, a district judge would handle misdemeanors, anything where you can't get more than 12 months in jail, DUIs. They handle some domestic violence hearings. They handle juvenile court. They handle probate. They they handle evictions and that type stuff.
Small claims.
Yeah, small claims. That's the big thing. And they handle civil cases less than, I don't even know what the limit is now. It used to be about $4,000 or $4,500. So, but there's a limit on any civil case. Circuit court handles all civil cases, over the jurisdictional amount for district court. Circuit court handles all felonies. There's a difference here than there is in a lot of places. We don't have a family court, whereas there's probably 10 judges, I would think, circuit judges in the state that don't have a family court. Out of all the circuit judges, I think there's only about 8 or 10 that don't have a family court. So
how many circuit judges do we have?
Well, you asked me something I don't know, Lisa.
Well,
There's quite a few. There's,
you think 120 counties?
yeah, there's
And
not.
just divided up by 4, that's at least 40.
No, there's more than that.
I was going to say, in Jefferson County, you probably have.
There's 12, I think, in Jefferson. I think there's
Yeah.
6 in Fayette.
Yeah.
But within that circuit, those family court judges are considered like circuit judges. But in the circuits like ours, where we have no family court, the circuit judges hears all the divorce cases.
Right. Okay.
They hear, if we had a family court, that would be taken away from our circuit judge. If we had a family court judge, a lot of the juvenile cases would go to the family court. All your status offenses, your truancy, all that type stuff would go to the family court judge. But since we don't have one, they would go to the district court. Circuit court gets all the divorce cases, plus all the criminal cases and all the civil cases. So really, I'll tell you a little story here. This judge from Jefferson County was kind of giving me some grief one day at a conference we were at, talking about country judges and stuff. And I said, well, I'm going to tell you something. I said, us country judges that don't have family court, I said, we're doing your job, plus we're doing your family court job. So I never heard any more from him after that. So, but it's a tougher job for a circuit judge if you do not have a family court.
Oh, yes.
There's no comparison.
Most definitely.
It's the toughest job in the whole judicial system, in my opinion. A circuit judge with no family court judge.
Yeah.
And I don't think you get much argument from anybody that's been a judge that would argue that point with you.
Oh, no, I'm sure. And of course, we didn't even have family court judges until
I don't know
maybe
the year. It's been
20 years
about
ago.
20, 25 years ago. They started with a pilot project.
Yeah.
I think it started in Jefferson County, and it just progressed and progressed. And usually what they do is if the caseload is such there's a new judge needed, they will designate that judge as a family court judge. Now, in 1999 in our circuit, we got a second circuit judge. When I started, I was the only circuit judge, but they created another judgeship. But at that time, they didn't designate it as a family court judge. So we have 2 circuit judges in this circuit with no family court. Now, since that time,
who are they currently?
it's Judge Spalding, Todd Spalding, and Judge
Spalding.
Alan Bertram.
Oh, right. Right, that's right.
Now, Nelson County, when they got their second circuit judge, that was pretty recent. Not recent, but within the last 15, 20 years. They also did not get a family court. So they're one of those circuits also that does not have family court. So there's not a lot of them left.
Well, that's like the field of social work. In these big counties, they specialize, the social workers do. In a small county like ours, the social worker has to know
everything. Yep.
And get training in everything.
That's correct.
I mean, they do 3, 4, or 5 times the job that maybe, because
they're more specialized.
They're more, and the same way with the circuit court
Yes.
judge. You have to know the law in every aspect.
You'd be surprised how many circuit judges that have family courts know very little about divorce law.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
because they don't
not
see it,
handling
and they're
it.
not dealing
Yeah.
with it. So
Yeah, yeah. So really, you have to have a whole lot more knowledge of
general knowledge,
the type
I guess.
of cases with regard to the type of cases
That's right.
that you handle. So now, when you were district judge, of course, I can myself personally think of some funny situations. Not so funny at the time, because I have to think about a situation one day where I had a juvenile in court, and you were going to order him placed at my recommendation into a facility, and a residential facility. And you might not even remember this, but that young man cursed me like a dog. And I looked up at you and I said, well, Judge, aren't you going to say something?
I don't remember it, Lisa. Did I say anything?
And then I think you tried to run from the courtroom.
Yeah, well, that was smart.
But but that's just an example of, some of the things. Do you remember anything?
Oh, well, Lisa, I probably was as laid back a judge as you probably ever went before in your experience, and a lot of lawyers would tell you that, but that doesn't mean you can't do your job, but at the same time you can make everybody feel at ease. So if somebody's at ease when they're in courtroom, you're going to go get a lot more than if they're all tensed and tight and upset. So you try to put everybody at ease, and I'd make jokes up there, and I'll tell you one good story. I hadn't been on the district bench probably a year, and I was in Greensburg, and this young man came before me, and he was wearing his hat, and I said, "Sir, do you mind to take your hat off?" I was polite. I didn't say take your hat off, and he said, "No, sir." I said, "Well, is there a reason? Do you have a medical condition or something why you can't take it off?" He said, "No, I just don't take my hat off." I said, "Well, you've got two choices." I said, "You can take your hat off or you can go to jail." So he looked at me like I was crazy, and he pulled that hat and he threw it down on right in front of me. I said, "Sheriff, take him to jail." I gave him 3 days in jail. He turned around and he looked at me and he said, "By the way, I like that dress you've got on." And I didn't even give him any more time for that. I just let him go. And he had to come back to court 2 weeks later, and guess what? His hat was in his back pocket. So he learned his lesson.
Well, that's a good story because, I know that in talking with people that were coming before you in court, or any of our district judges, I would say, it's important that you use your manners and say yes, sir, or no, ma'am, and that you dress appropriately, and things of that nature, taking off your hat or what have you. Show some respect. And it's funny how some people would come into court and just crazy.
You can't imagine what some people wore to court. I mean, and we have there's still a sign that says, I think, no shorts, no tank tops, and stuff like that as you come in, but they just ignore it. Yeah. Some of them do.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
and then, of course, I suppose at your time in district court, although I know there were heart-wrenching situations that, I dealt with, so I know you dealt with, and with regard to family situations and child abuse and domestic violence and things of that nature. And in the beginning of those days, we didn't even have any laws on domestic violence.
No, we didn't. No,
and
that's
that was
correct. That's correct.
And I can think of some situations then that were pretty scary.
Oh yes, and it's still bad out there. Mm-hmm. You can get protection from the court with an order to require someone to stay away, and that doesn't mean they're going to stay away. Mm-hmm. And you hate to say, but that's a piece of paper that says you're to stay away. Now, it does give you protection to where you could call anybody and they could look you up in the system, and if he's in your driveway and not supposed to be there, they can get him on the spot and take him straight to jail.
Yeah.
Or her. I don't mean it's whoever it is.
Yeah.
So it is good in that respect.
Yeah.
But if somebody's going to do something, you might not be able to stop them. I hate to say it, but you do all you can to get protection, and it's been good. Yeah. It's helped a lot, but it's not going to solve the problem 100%.
No, but at least there's a law on the books, because in the early days there was not, and unless they were doing something to the person, then there was nothing that could be done.
That's right.
So now there's laws on the books regarding that. And so speaking of that, Dodie, you know, with the in court and some of the orders you had to give at times, uh, were you ever threatened?
No, I was never threatened, but no, I wasn't.
That's very good. And you know what that says, Donnie? That says that you were probably a pretty, like you said, laid back and fair judge. Because
Well,
it takes all kind. I mean, there's different personalities out there, and
let me say this: if you treated someone with respect, and they knew that you were being fair, and they knew you were just doing your job, and you were polite to them, and just did your job, they knew that's all you could do.
yeah,
And I've been out in public, since I've retired, and I've seen people on the street, and they'll come up to me and they say, "You remember me?" And I'll say, well, sometimes I say yes, sometimes I say no. I mean, I don't know. He said, well, yeah. I said, "You sent me to jail." And I thought, oh, Lord. He said, "But I got best thing you ever did." He said, one guy said that straightened me up, and he said, I hadn't been in trouble since. So that makes you feel good that, people aren't vindictive. They know you're just doing what you had to do, and you made a difference sometimes in somebody's life. So
that makes you feel really
that
good
makes you
when
feel
something
good.
like that happens.
Yeah, especially if somebody you sent to jail, because there's not a whole lot worse things you can do to somebody
Yeah.
other than that. Now, I will say this. I tell you, the toughest cases I think I had to deal with mentally was terminating parental rights. You dealt with this in your career, but when you terminate them, it's over, and it just you had to think about that and make sure that you were doing the right thing, and those things kind of you would think about them for quite some time, thinking, did I do right by doing that? And they were tough cases to deal with. Now, some cases weren't hard to terminate, but there was others that were, I don't know. We've given you a chance. You're not doing what you're supposed to do. The child would probably be better off. Is that what you should do or shouldn't do? And they were the toughest cases I would think that I had to deal with. Criminal cases, most time people came in there, knew they did wrong. They were just trying to get the best deal they could. And but
And Dodie, speaking of that, with regard to termination of parental rights, it used to be that it was because there's different standards, I don't think, that people don't understand.
Right.
With regard to how that decision is made.
That's correct.
And
a process.
Right.
You got to go through the process. You can't just terminate them.
Right.
You've got to give that person every opportunity to do what they're supposed to do to prove themselves. And
right.
then when they don't, that's when the cabinet steps in and usually files
for
termination.
The petition to terminate. And then, you have with that what you call clear and convincing evidence, those standards, let's see, a preponderance of evidence. How does that work now?
Well, you've got preponderance, clear and convincing, and you've got beyond a reasonable doubt. Beyond a reasonable doubt's criminal cases. And
right.
You get into, those, and that standard.
That's a legal standpoint.
Right, and that standard is
a
a reason a lot of people are not found guilty in trials. You say, I'm not so sure about that. So if you're not so sure about it, generally you're going to say, I can't say he's guilty.
You can't say beyond a reasonable doubt.
That's right.
So
but that's the stiffest standard, and then the others aren't as preponderance is kind of, a little more than half or something. That's kind of way they talk about that. More likely than not,
Yeah.
But
and so, speaking of that, then I know had dealt with murder cases.
Yes.
And it has to be beyond a reasonable doubt. Have you? And of course, I'd say those have to be the most difficult.
I had one that may have been my most difficult case. It was in Taylor County. It was a double homicide, and it was a death penalty case.
Ooh.
And it was a very unusual case. Generally, when you have a death penalty case, you go through a trial, and it takes forever. You've got to individually question jurors, and it'd take you a week to get a jury probably, and then you have the trial, and then you have sentencing. Well, in this particular case, there was a double homicide, and the individual agreed to plead guilty with an open plea, with no recommendation by the Commonwealth, with everything on the table, which meant he could have gotten life without parole for 25 years. He could have got life without parole, period, or the death penalty. So that's what I had to decide. And I ended up, and it was a young man too, and I ended up giving him life without parole. Anytime you have a death penalty case, they're never over with if you give the death penalty. They're
Right.
back and forth in court.
Because they
and
appeal those
it's just
over and over, don't they?
it just never ends.
Or I guess it would go up, could go all the
Oh,
way
it goes
up to
all the way to the
United
Supreme.
States
Then
Supreme.
they can file various motions called like 1142, which means ineffective assistance of counsel, and there's all kinds of ways they can get the thing set aside. So, you know, I just felt that was the best solution for the case, but it was a very tough case for me to deal with.
And I bet, you know, you probably got criticism for not giving them the death penalty.
I don't think I did, really.
I don't know.
I don't think I did, but you know, I think the defendant was hoping for life without parole for 25 years.
Okay.
So that's basically where I think, you know, the Commonwealth might have wanted the death penalty. They might have wanted life without parole for 25, and I ended up giving life without parole on that case. So, but that was a very difficult case.
Oh, I can imagine. Have you ever had a case where the jury didn't come back with the verdict
Yes.
that you suspected they were going
Oh,
to?
all the time.
All the time? Really?
I would say this. When I started on the bench, you could almost predict jury outcomes. When I got, right before I retired, I didn't have a clue what they would do.
Is that right?
I'm
Why-
serious.
how
Well,
do you-
let me give you an example. I tried a case in Taylor County, a sexual abuse and, you know, a bad case, and multiple counts, you know, like hundreds of counts or something. The jury over there found him guilty, and when you added up the years, it totaled 5,620 years that they gave him. The case went all the way to the Supreme Court.
The Kentucky Supreme
Yes,
Court?
the Kentucky Supreme Court. They reversed it. There was something in there that nobody objected to, and they said, well, you know, it prejudiced the jury or something, but nobody ever objected. So there's really no way to cure that during the trial if nobody's objecting to something. So they made us try it over. Well, they had so much publicity in Taylor County that we moved it to Marion County and tried it over there, and the man was found not guilty in Marion County.
No.
Yes, and it was a tough case. It could have gone either way. I'm serious.
Multiple counts?
Well, there's a history behind it and a story behind it that you'd have to know. Parties were going through a divorce, and you know, there's a lot of history
okay.
there, and so, you know, there really wasn't any physical evidence. So
There's usually not physical evidence in those cases.
well, I understand that, but
Uh-huh.
but usually you would have more than just a he said, she said in
Right.
a case of that magnitude.
Right, right.
But you know, there you go. It goes
Oh,
to the
wow.
standard of burden of beyond a reasonable
Beyond.
doubt. I'm sure they had their doubts.
Unbelievable.
So
Yeah.
you can't predict what a jury will do. Anybody that tells you that, they don't know what they're talking about. So
Do you think, and you say you used to be able to, but now, I mean, before you left, it had come to that point. Do you think that things have changed in some way?
well, the jury pool has changed. They used to have jury commissioners, which they would pick a pool that you choose from. Well, you know, they would pick mostly people that you would know. Now the juries are selected randomly from a combination of driver's license, property tax rolls, and voting registration. So, you know, I always told jurors to be sure and vote, that's not the only way they get you. They'll get you from your driver's license. So, and then you get people in there that have moved into your county from somewhere you don't know where they've been. Nobody knows them, but they're on the jury. So you don't know these people. Whereas before, you kind of knew the jury, you knew how they thought and so forth. So, so it's a lot different than it used to be.
Yeah, yeah. So you served altogether then as a judge, how many years?
29.
29.
Counting my seniors judgeship.
And your senior judgeship. And now you've retired, but you are handling...
I do mediation work now.
Mediation work.
Yes. And
Which
I travel
is,
all over central Kentucky doing that. Well, I do divorce mediation. When somebody's getting a divorce, instead of going to a hearing, they'll say, let's go to mediation. I go in and try to get both sides to come to an agreement, and I tell them that, you know, you're not going to get everything, you're not either, we got to try to come together. I do civil mediation, and I'm one of the few people that does criminal mediation. We do some of that around here, we do some of that in Bardstown. In Hart County, I've done some over there. That's the same circuit as Bardstown. I do some here in our circuit, but a lot of people don't do that. But we do it some here. And
well, that saves going to court and things in a lot of those situations. I think it would be a whole lot less. It would be less expensive for everyone, correct?
Yes, and I did 2 criminal mediations recently that were high-profile cases that one of the judges in Bardstown got, or actually both of them. One of them had one had the other. They weren't from Nelson County, but they were special judge in. And these cases were 20 years old. I mean, one of them was a 20-year-old murder, and they had to solve it. We ended up mediating that, and they reached a settlement the next day after we mediated it, and it saved the state just tremendous amount of money and time. We did one also that had been back and forth back to the Kentucky Supreme Court and back, and they were going to try it again, and we got it resolved. It was out of Hardin County, but one of the judges was out of Nelson that had to preside over it, and the other one was out of Bullitt County, and they were having to preside over that.
So you got those resolved.
Well, not by myself, but we got them resolved through mediation.
Yeah. So, well, that's really good. And then, of course, I before I let you go, because I could talk all day.
I know you can, Lisa.
And really, there's a lot of things you could, we could discuss regarding the court system and changes and what have you that, would be, I think, our listening audience would really enjoy. But you'll have to come back another day.
All right.
But you have to, before you go, you have to mention about your case in Bardstown. What an unusual situation that was with the mayor.
Well, I'll say this. About 3 years ago, I was asked to preside in Hodgenville on a hearing to remove the mayor in Hodgenville. And that hearing took about 2 days, and the city council there ended up removing the mayor.
I think that involved also some criminal charges,
yes,
perhaps.
That's correct.
With regard to
money and gas cards. There was a lot going on over there, and they ended up removing the mayor. Well, Bardstown had a problem last year, and I got a call, and I was asked, would I be willing to be the hearing officer? I wasn't the judge. I was a hearing officer, and that's what I was in Hodgenville. I was a hearing officer. So I just sat in and conducted the hearing, but basically we did it just like a trial with objections and rulings by me as the hearing officer. The decision was made by the city council in both cases. I did not make any.
They were like the jury.
Yes, that's right. That's kind of, if you want to look at it that way, that's how you would compare it.
Yeah.
And they ended up removing the mayor over there, and it was it was pretty tenseful in there. It took, I think I was over there almost, I know we had 2 days full of hearings, and then we might have had a half day of other type hearings, to set the parameters of the hearing. So, It was a tough case.
Well, you're probably one of very few judges who've had that kind of experience.
Yes, because I've had some, I think when they called me, they said, we don't know anybody else ever done one of these, when they called me from Bardstown. And I said, well, I did one in Hodgenville, and I kept all my stuff on it. And so I would figure out, how to do it.
Because you have to follow the law, and
but
and
the
there's
law
certain
is,
regulations
that's
on
right,
that.
but it's not that clear cut how to do it. You so I kind of just ran it like I would a courtroom. And that way I felt like I was giving the mayors in each of those towns full opportunity to be heard, and get everything out front, and don't let evidence in that probably shouldn't be in. And but it was all up to the city council. So
well, I know there's a controversy over that whole situation, because which I thought was kind of an interesting point, in that the prosecution, in basically the city council itself, who are the one who initiated the process, are also the jury.
That's correct. But you have to have a unanimous decision.
Exactly.
And if there was one person on there that wanted to hold out, it wouldn't have gone through.
Yeah.
And I know when I did the one in Hodgenville, I don't, just the talk you heard was there was 5 votes. They didn't know how one person was going to vote. Well, they eventually had a 6-0 vote, so they removed the mayor there as well. So, that is a little bit odd.
It's a little different, yeah.
And I think they've argued that point, that it's not right to do it that way, but that's the way the law says it's to be done.
Yeah. So, well, now, Lou Ann has retired also.
Yes,
from
she's a retired
teaching.
Teacher at Washington County Elementary, but she does work a couple of days a week. She pulls kids and instructs. She's working right now at Glasscock over in Marion County, but it's just part time. She's got,
filling in over there. Yeah,
she does. It's not a sub. She actually pulls kids and works with them. Those that need help.
I see. Good.
And so she does that maybe 2 days
So
a
she's
week.
still staying busy, and then of course, you've got grandchildren now, and Michael is married, but no children yet.
That's right.
And then Megan has 2 children now.
2 little boys.
And she lives in Louisville, and you all get an opportunity, I hope.
We see them, don't we? Keep them overnight too, so they're a handful to get 2 of them.
How old are
One
they?
of them, George, is 3. That's a good name for him.
That is a real good name.
And William is 10 months.
Okay.
So,
well, congratulations
well,
to
thank
you.
you.
I know that
And
they're a lot of fun.
And Michael's in Lexington. You know that because your kids are. I guess they see each other up there. I would think. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
so, and I know you're very proud of them, and hopefully now you get a chance to, since you're cut down a little bit.
I don't work every day.
You don't work every day?
No, I don't work every day. I do work a few days a week here and there. Pretty much every week, but not every day.
And you're playing golf in the summer, because I see you at the course.
Now, Lisa, I might play once a week.
Sundays.
Yeah,
you
that's
play
it.
on Sundays.
That's right, after 8:30 Mass.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So that's good for you. That keeps you healthy and active, and so that's good.
Yeah.
I think you're probably walking some too.
I do a little. I walk a little bit. I kind of slacked off, but I did walk this morning on the treadmill. I need to get on there and shed some pounds. So.
Well, that's always when you get older. That's par for the course. Isn't
I
it,
know.
Donnie?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So, well, thank you for being on here
Well,
today.
I enjoyed talking to you.
And congratulations to you on your retirement. And you, Dodie, you were a fine judge.
Well,
I've
I
dealt with you
appreciate
in
that.
district court and circuit court, and I just want to say that I think one of the most important things you mentioned today was with regard to respect. It goes
both ways.
As long as when you show respect to people, most likely they're going to be respectful back to you.
That's correct.
Yeah.
You hit the nail on the head. That
Yeah.
might be the secret. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you certainly exemplified that, so thank you very
Well,
much.
thank you for having me, and I enjoyed
Yeah.
talking to you.
I look forward to seeing you in the future.
Oh, I'll see you in town, Lisa.
All right. Thanks,
Thank
Buddy.
you.